There's a famous book that was written in the 1960s called Night. This book, Night, was written by Elie Wiesel, who was a survivor of the Shoah, of the Holocaust in Auschwitz and Birkenau. And Elie Wiesel chose the title of this name, Night, to try to express the incredible pain, sorrow, and darkness of all the suffering, the cruelty that he had experienced from the Nazis, the death that he had seen. And in this memoir, Night, there's an incredibly moving and powerful scene. In one of these concentration camps, there was a bit of an uprising, and the Nazis wanted to punish all the prisoners who were there. And so they forced them to watch as a young man was hanged from the gallows. And they all had to stand there and watch this man dying. And as they were watching this man dying, Elie Wiesel heard another of his Jewish brothers behind him say in a strong voice, a painful voice, "Where is God? Where is he now?" This man, this poor man who was hung there on the gallows, continued to die. And then the Nazis, to make things even worse, commanded that all of the people, the prisoners, the Jews, process forward and see this man up close who was hanging there on the cross, this young man who was dying. And again, as they were walking forward to see this man, Elie Wiesel behind him heard again that man say, "Where is God now?" And Elie Wiesel, in his memoir, says that at that moment he heard a voice within his heart say, "Here he is. God is here, dying in the gallows." Elie Wiesel in this book, Night, expresses this strong faith of many Jewish people that God is very close to the martyrs, to those who suffer, whether it be in the various persecutions throughout history, Greek times, Roman times, or again during World War II during the Shoah. Today, Good Friday, we commemorate the passion and the death of Jesus, the death of another Jewish martyr who died under great political oppression, not the Nazis now, but under the Roman authorities, under the Roman emperor. During this Triduum, as we pass through Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Easter Vigil into Sunday, we want to ask ourselves, when we see all that Jesus is doing, to ask ourselves two questions. What is Christ doing? What is Christ doing in his death? What is Jesus doing? And what is the significance of what Jesus is doing for us? Let us then consider that first question today on Good Friday. By dying on the Christ, what is Jesus doing? What has Jesus done for us? In dying on the cross, God has forever come extremely close and identified himself with those who suffer. Where is God now? Where is he? God is hanging now on the cross. God, in becoming a human being in Jesus Christ, in the incarnation, has joined himself to the depths, really, of human suffering. Jesus Christ was true God and true man, like us in all ways except for sin. And we see throughout the Gospels that Jesus certainly experienced joy and peace, but Jesus also experienced much suffering. We see that Jesus was misunderstood. Jesus was rejected. Jesus also experienced pain when his friends suffered. We hear in John's Gospel that when he was by the tomb of Lazarus and he saw Mary and Martha there in pain, Jesus wept. Jesus today on Good Friday endures all this torment of human suffering. Jesus is nailed to the cross, which is, of course, not just a mode of execution, but a means of terror. The Romans used this to terrorize the civilians into subjection. And someone who was crucified, oftentimes the crucifix was just at eye level, and the person was crucified at a crossroads so people could see and be afraid. Crucifixion would take time. The one dying would die eventually by asphyxiation when they could no longer bend their knees straight in order to breathe. In God becoming man in Jesus Christ, in suffering, in dying for us, God has come so close to us. He has forever joined himself to those who suffer. This is what Christ does for us on Good Friday. What then does this mean for us? What is the significance of Good Friday in our lives? And of course, in this great mystery of God dying for us, we cannot hope to cover everything. But 2 points really, I think, stand out. In dying for us, the significance for us is that Jesus is very close to us when we suffer. We never suffer alone. Although the nights that we might pass through in our suffering are not as dark as that of Elie Wiesel, each and every one of us suffer in our lives. When we look out at the world today, when we see the news constantly, we see so much suffering. So many people are living in such a dark night, whether it be the people now in Gaza, in the Ukraine, people who are suffering abuse, neglect, homelessness, people we know also in our own community, our friends, suffering from cancer or other diseases, people suffering from unemployment, young people suffering to find direction, purpose, and value in life. We all experience some kind of night, some kind of darkness, and with the incarnation, with God becoming Jesus and dying for us, Jesus has forever linked himself to those who suffer. We never suffer alone. More than this as well, Good Friday teaches us that in the night of our darkness, Jesus has lit a candle, a light of hope. This, of course, is so important. In this Easter Triduum, Good Friday isn't the end. On Saturday, Holy Saturday, we celebrate the resurrection of Christ. The story of Jesus ends in life, the victory of life over death. So too for our suffering. Death and suffering is not the end of the story. In John's Gospel, the Passion account which we have just heard, John in particular emphasizes this. In John's Gospel, he calls the passion and death of Jesus the book of glory. John is certainly aware that Jesus suffered greatly, but always wants to point us to the resurrection. In John's Passion account, the entire darkness of Jesus is illuminated by the light of the resurrection. For Jesus, then, death was not the end of the story. This gives us hope. It lights a candle in the darkness in the night of our suffering. We don't know oftentimes what will follow after. What is the next chapter of our suffering or for those that we care about? But we can be certain that for each of us, God is writing a chapter that is full of hope, because in the end, on Good Friday, we learn that life, love, goodness is what wins in the end. This is what conquers. When we suffer, when those around us suffer, it's natural for us to ask, where is God? Where is He now? On Good Friday, we remember that God has come so close to us. And during this Good Friday liturgy, we will have the opportunity soon to pray extended prayers of the faithful, to pray for all those who suffer, to pray that they experience the consolation of Christ beside them. As well, after these intercessions, we will have the opportunity to venerate the crucifix, the crucified Christ on the cross. Where is God? Where is He now? When we venerate that cross, we remind ourselves that God is with us. God is here hanging on the cross for love of us.